Hello again. I don't know about you, but I've had a strange relationship with the rhythms of the day during this pandemic. In the early days of lockdown, I found myself crossing almost everything out of the diary and starting to rewrite what it meant to do what I do. I found myself taking the opportunity to stop wearing a watch. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't completely abandoning our ideas of dividing the days up into hours. There are plenty more timepieces in the house which I could use, and which I did use. But just for that brief time, I engaged a bit more with some of the natural rhythms. And just for that brief time, I worried a bit less about exactly how every single minute of the day was passing. But since then, the diary's filled up again, and I've put the watch back on. But the longer rhythms, the weeks and the months, they still feel disrupted. We stepped out of church buildings in the middle of Lent, which is 3.5 months ago now. And a few weeks ago we had a hot and dry spell, and I wasn't sure whether it was summer or not, because our normal rhythms of the year were so disrupted. It felt as if we were in some kind of limbo. Since then it's cooled down a bit, and more rain has come. So it must be time for cricket. And this week the first test is on when it's not raining, and summer has come at last. As the start of play on the first day was delayed by drizzle, I saw a comment somebody had made that, well, we've waited months for this, so another hour or two isn't really going to matter. I've mentioned before that cricket is one of those activities, at least from a spectator's point of view, which involves patience and waiting and attention. A rhythm of waiting and then concentrating and then back to waiting. Or perhaps a burst of action. And I only know it from a spectator's point of view because, well, look at me. Test cricket lasts up to 5 days, and it's a bit of a standing joke that it's so boring it can last for 5 days and still be a draw. And you compare this classic sport from these islands with the typical idea of, say, American sport, which often demands a winner and speed and excitement. Some years ago we had an American minister at our church, and we thought we'd introduce him to the joys of Test cricket. We probably thought it would be an amusing task. But no luck, because it turned out he was already very keen on cricket. As it happens, after a spell back in the States, he's returning to the British Methodist Church this summer, so it must have attracted him back. Test cricket takes time. And more we have obsessed over time. Centuries ago, we'd have known the passing of time only by looking at the movement of the sun and the seasons. And later we might have had a chiming clock striking the hour, then minute hands and second hands. And the coming of faster public transport with the railways meant the development of a standard time across the country. With advances in science and technology, clocks have become more and more accurate, with our understanding of physics meaning now we have an almost unimaginable level of accuracy and regularity which is possible in our clocks. And that regularity in our modern clocks actually shows up that the movement of the Earth does actually change. Our clocks have become more predictable than the movements of the sun and the Earth which inspired them in the first place. So every often we don't just add a leap day to the year as we have done this year. We sometimes even add leap seconds. And the most recent one of them was 3.5 years ago now. Measuring time can be really precise. And lots of modern technology depends on such accurate measurement of time. Technology such as GPS, which drives our satellite navigation and much, much more. All of which meant it felt like a breather to live without my watch for a while. It felt like a chance to return to something more like natural rhythms. But our perception of time is not even the same as those natural rhythms of the seasons and of the light and the darkness. So time can be measured in a remarkably precise and regular way, but measuring time is not quite the same as perceiving time. We can perceive time differently depending on what's going on. If you're having fun or you're utterly absorbed in something you're doing, it's easy to lose track of time, as we say. All your brain power seems to go into that one thing you're doing. You pay so much attention to what you're doing that you pay no attention to anything else, not even the passing of time. If you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, or dancing, or painting, or working on some tricky problem, or reading, or making music, or whatever it is that's your thing, sometimes time just goes and we don't notice it. We get into that state where we focus our attention on one thing and nothing else gets noticed, not even time. It's been called a state of flow or being in the zone, and it no longer matters whether we spend 5 minutes or 5 days. Paying attention is a difficult thing. Getting into that state is not automatic. There's something about being skilled, there's something about pushing yourself, being like an athlete in the rhythm of the movement of their body, the effort and the skill, but also something bigger than that which takes over. I'm fascinated by the links between attention and prayer. Prayer as paying attention to God. Prayer as allowing God to pay attention to us. If God is love and God is paying infinite attention to us, then I wonder whether the passing of time becomes infinitely insignificant for God. I don't know really which way round I'm arguing this. Perhaps God exists in eternity outside time because of this infinite attention. Or perhaps God's love means infinite attention because God is outside the time we experience. Or maybe I'm just wondering whether there is a link. Perhaps I'm pushing too much of human psychology onto God. Or perhaps there really is some kind of a link between that infinite attention and eternity. But whatever the truth of that, if you're waiting for an eternity, for the rain to ease and for the covers to come off and for play to resume, then maybe that patience which cricket is often said to teach us actually can remind us of something of God. In God we find the rhythms of time on the scale of the solar system as well as on the scale of the atomic clock. But we also go beyond time. And that would be mind-blowing enough, except that I keep coming back to God is love. And what God is paying that attention to, what God longs to spend time with, is you and me. If you're one of those who see the return of Test cricket as good news, then great. But even that pales into insignificance. You ain't seen nothing yet. God bless. See you soon.